Time for business. Kate Moody joins us a day after agreeing to allow Australian users access to news again. Facebook is taking steps towards putting its hand in its pocket and paying for news content.
Yes, it says it's already started doing it. It says it's invested some $600 million on the news industry in recent years. It has now pledged to match Google's $1 billion budget for news content in the years to come. Last week, the social media giant blocked news stories in Australia in protest over a draft law which would force online giants to pay publishers whose work is featured on their platforms. Google, while also pushing back at the legislation, has been brokering deals with media outlets. In a blog post on Wednesday, Facebook said it was in active negotiations with news companies in France and Germany, among others, but defended its own move in Australia, saying again that it was the result of a fundamental misunderstanding of the relationship it has with news publishers. The Post likened Australia's push to forcing car makers to fund radio stations because people might listen to them while in the car, and then letting stations set that price. The Spanish economy has been among the hardest hit by the coronavirus pandemic, with GDP contracting 11% last year. Its government has offered more than 150 billion euros in aid, a mix of loans, bailouts, and furlough payments. On Wednesday, it added a further 11 billion for businesses and workers, as Marius Sofos reports.
Getting the chequebook out once again, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez announced an additional €11 billion package to support small and medium-sized businesses, as well as the self-employed, particularly those working in the tourism sector.
11.000 millones de euros para reforzar la solvencia de sus balances y puedan así retomar su actividad económica, hacer las inversiones necesarias y contratar a los trabajadores y trabajadoras que requieren para iniciar en plenitud de facultades la recuperación económica.
The Spanish government is expected to provide indirect aid to companies already receiving secured loans from the state and to recapitalise small to medium-sized enterprises. Only viable companies that have suffered losses due to the pandemic are eligible for support. Spain's hospitality sector has already been demanding urgent help, requiring an estimated €12 billion to survive.
Ante una crisis pandémica, ante la situación actual en los países emisores de tercera ola y de cierres perimetrales y restricciones a volar, nos encontramos básicamente con una clientela local, algo de nacional y algo de internacional.
While the aid plan does not exclude the potential for offering direct aid to businesses, the government maintains that it's already provided significant financial support, including €40 billion for a furlough support scheme. To kickstart the economy, then, Madrid is counting on the €140 billion allocated to Spain under the EU's COVID-19 recovery package.
Let's check in on the day's trading action now. Wall Street has closed higher. The Dow Jones wiping out some earlier losses to rise over 400 points and end at a new record high. The S&P 500 over 1% above the flat line as well. The Nasdaq not far behind. Boeing shares jumped 8%. Johnson & Johnson up 1.3% after U.S. regulators took a step towards approving the drug maker's COVID-19 vaccine for distribution. The major European indices closed up as well. We saw shares of the French hotel group Accor rising nearly 3%, despite reporting net losses of almost €2 billion last year. Moving on to some of the day's other business headlines. The European Commission has opened a public consultation on gig economy workers. Trade unions and employers groups will be asked whether there should be changes for the growing number of people working for platforms like Uber and Deliveroo. Spain and the UK are among those that have recently ruled in specific cases that they should be treated as employees and not independent workers. And prosecutors in Italy on Wednesday fined 4 food delivery platforms for breaching safety labor rules. The South African government has announced a budget which will include more than €500 million to vaccinate 2/3 of the population. The budget was unveiled a day after data showed unemployment had hit over 30% and 60% among young people. The spending plan did not include an expected tax hike. And London's Heathrow Airport lost more than €2 billion last year as the pandemic pushed passenger numbers to their lowest levels since the 1970s. The number of people using the airport fell by 73% in 2020. Well, the International Air Transport Association has downgraded its forecast for recovery in air travel this year. It says airlines are on track to lose between $75 and $95 billion in 2021. That's nearly double the $48 billion it had previously forecast, but well short of the $150 billion in losses that carriers saw last year. While demand is unlikely to rebound fully until the pandemic is brought under control and travel restrictions eased, IATA is hoping that technology can play a role in restarting air travel. It's preparing to launch an app which will standardize COVID test and vaccination records. Dozens of airlines are to begin trials of that digital travel pass in the coming weeks. And Mark, this is all about making travel, of course, more safe, but also a little bit easier. Heathrow, for example, has said it takes some passengers up to 20 minutes to organize all of their COVID paperwork while they're checking in.
Indeed, and that's if you add that up, passenger by passenger, it just creates delays and queues miles long, doesn't it? So it can't continue. Kate, you can continue, but sadly, not right now. We've got to go. Time runs out. That's the sad thing. Kate, great to see you. Kate with all the business. Fantastic. Stay with us. More to come. Live from Paris.